Everyone, my name is Valeria Rivera, and I'm a marketing specialist here at Study in the USA. We're so glad you can join us today. In honor of Women's History Month, we have one special session in store for you. Join Study in the USA and our partners at QS as we reflect on each of our guests' journeys. We will uncover how higher education has played a part in their success, and who knows, you might be inspired to take a next step into reaching your next level in your education. For those of you who are just joining us, I wanted to once again introduce myself. I'm Valeria, and I'll be moderating today's session. We'll take a few moments before we begin to allow others to join. But in the meantime, we'd love to hear from those of us who are present today. How has higher education impacted your life? And how do you consider the biggest impact can be if you pursue higher education? As we're getting ready to start the session, I cannot help to think about the so many women who have impacted my journey. Today, I'm honored to introduce some incredible and inspirational women who are doing amazing things in their industries. Today, we're joined by Carol Figueroa, a graduate with a master's in international business working at Microsoft, Ufuma Otu, an MBA grad at Take Culture Media, Tonia Shofaluke, a graduate with a master's in biomedical science at MITRE, and last but not least, Stephanie Milne, an MBA grad at Future Insight NH. I want to welcome you all and thank you for joining us today. As you may notice, something that connects each of our guests is your education. All four of these incredible women have earned a master's degrees, and we're excited to hear their stories and share them with you. Before we dive in, I wanted to mention that we'll be having a Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and the guests will be answering them before the closing of our session. With that being said, let's get started. Hi, ladies. Can we go around the room first and have everyone quickly introduce themselves and how you ended up in your current position?
Sure, I can start. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tonia Shofaluke again, and I currently work at the MITRE Corporation. My path is a bit untraditional. I worked in clinical research prior to getting my master's, where I had a lot of patient interaction and working with the community. And then after getting my master's, I went to work for the Department of Defense, where I was supporting naval aeromedical safety. But I really wanted to get back into the public health space. And so I was seeking opportunities that would really combine health, science, and technology, as well as business. And where I work currently, MITRE was the perfect opportunity for that. So that's just a little bit about my background and how I ended up at MITRE in my current position.
Okay, awesome. Who wants to go next?
I can go. Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Milne. I received my MBA from Roger Williams University in Rhode Island. I'm currently working as the digital marketing and graphic design specialist for a nonprofit called Future Insight, which is based in New Hampshire. And I am also a yoga teacher on the side.
All right.
I guess I go. So hello, everyone. My name is Carol Figueroa. I am graduate from a Master in International Business from Florida International University. And currently I work at Microsoft. I've worked in many other companies, H&R Block, Bank of America. Currently I'm at Microsoft and I manage their Xbox e-commerce department, which means that we touch all of the video games that get displayed in all of the different platforms. And I'm very excited to be here. To get here, I've had a very unorthodox path that I could definitely talk to you about, going from banking to video games. But it has been very fun. I am a career coach, and I have my own business where I work with team leaders, especially minority groups, Blacks and women, and helping them reach their authentic selves at work. And it's a very big passion of mine that was a passion that turned into another business. So excited to be here.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Ufuma Otu, and I am a communication strategist. I have a very untraditional path to the present as well, because I'm also a Scrum certified project manager with experience, managing, strategic, cost-effective outcomes for clients in the private industry, I should say in the private sector, nonprofit, public sector. The servant leadership framework of Scrum has helped with various projects that I've worked on. in a variety of industries and informed my new book, Lead You, shameless plug, that's displayed on the screen. So happy to dive more into my background as we go along.
All right, well, thank you everybody for introducing themselves. I love how everybody's journey is like a little bit different and really goes to show how, you know, each of us take a very different path. However, the common denominator between all of you, of course, is your master's degrees. And in that topic, can you please share what led you to make the decision to go to grad school and what motivated you despite the challenges that it comes with?
I can start. I did the 4+1 program with my university, and it was always a dream of mine to get my master's degree. I've always believed in higher education, and I felt that, you know, it would really help me grow throughout my professional career. So with that being said, I had gotten my MBA during COVID, and I felt it was no better time to do so considering the tough job market. So that was kind of my process when making the decision to get my master's.
That was a great use of the pandemic, the lockdown and everything. So good for you.
I can go next. For me, it was a decision that I started pondering while I was in undergrad. I had colleagues who had received their BA degrees and decided to go on directly to graduate school to study a variety of different things, creative writing, poli-sci, nursing, you name it. So I always had it at the back of my mind that even as I started my first job, I would continue my education. So it was a matter of trying to figure out which program I wanted to commit to. So after doing research, talking to current students, figuring out what would best align with my schedule at the time, what the commute would be like, all that good stuff, and all the things you think about, I should say, when you're contemplating a degree program, I decided. So working full-time at the time, though, meant having to, find a time to make all of this happen, right? So that was, a bit challenging. But, as I say, if you really want to do something, you find a way, right? If you don't want to do it, you find an excuse. So I decided to find a way, make a way somehow.
Yeah, exactly. Where there's will, there is a way. All right, who wants to go next?
I can go next. As I mentioned, my path is a little untraditional. So, I was set on pursuing medicine as a career. And so after undergrad, I took some years to join the workforce. And because of that gap, I knew that I wanted to go back to school and get some more education before pursuing medicine. And so for those who are unfamiliar with kind of the pre-med route, there are a number of different programs you can pursue if you're trying to bolster your application to medical school. So there are post-bac programs, there are certificate programs, but then you also have special master's programs or traditional master's programs. And I was back and forth between doing a post-bac or a certificate. There were just more programs that I could find that were suited to that. But after speaking with, family members and just thinking on my own, I really knew that I wanted to pursue a degree granting program. While I knew that I did fully intend to go to medical school, I knew that in the event that I did not, I would have that graduate degree, which would make me more competitive in the workforce. And even if I did go to medical school, I'd also knew that that would just be an add-on, right? So there really was no negative to it. And so I think the biggest challenge for me was the financial piece, the cost, having to not work for over a year to commit to this program. But I think what really motivated me was just knowing what the outcome would be, that it would help me get to that next step, and it would also take me further along in my career. So definitely, I think thinking about your career trajectory and where you want it to go is a huge piece. And that really did motivate me despite the financial challenges and things of that sort.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Carol, what about you?
Love it. Yeah. So I would say for me, my undergrad was outside of the continental US. I graduated from my bachelor's from the University of Puerto Rico, and I knew that I wanted to do more with my career and expand more. And I know that I was not going to get those opportunities in the island. So in order for me to be able to get the jobs that I wanted to go after, I had to get a degree from the US to be able to, be able to compete in the market with other people. And so I did that. And there was this university that I was looking at, Florida seemed like the right fit, because also at the time that I was pursuing my master's degree, my English was extremely, watching TV basic, right? So I didn't know the terms, and it was challenging to be able to get a degree. Also at the time, back in 2005, there wasn't a lot of people pursuing higher education. And I wanted to put my name higher in the pile of other candidates that were applying for the same jobs. And I knew that a lot of people were pursuing their bachelor degree, but there was very few people pursuing their higher education. So I knew that in order for me to compete in the place I wanted to compete, I needed to be able to have a little bit extra. International business seemed like a natural fit for me, given that I spoke two languages. I was learning English and I spoke Spanish, and we're in the midst of many global companies going global or already being international and global. So I felt like a natural fit, and it was not an MBA at the time, but I didn't have the background in business. So I think like the Master in International Business kind of opened it up. And doing my master's, I fell in love with marketing, which is the path that has led me to where I am today.
Mm-hmm. No, that's really interesting. And in the topic of grad school, I know that each one of you went a little bit into what program you chose and why, but can you go in a little bit more in depth into like, what about the specific program that you went into, like caught your attention? Why was it better in your eyes than any other programs that you were looking into? And is there any advice that you can give our audience today on how to make that decision for themselves?
Yeah, I can wrap, since I already kind of started to go in that route. I won't add more color to it, but there were two reasons. One, it was, at the moment where I was pursuing my career, I needed a program that, wasn't going to financially not work out long term, right? I am a big believer that whatever program you choose and what university you're going to graduate from and how much you're paying in tuition has to match your potential income in the career choice that you're going to be after. Because that's what we see a lot of, the discussion around student loans and whatnot. I think it's important for you when you're making your decision to know what can you financially afford at the moment, but also how many credits does the degree have, what kind of opportunities this degree will get you based on what you select. And the Master in International Business was very much, honestly, in my professional career and the employers that I've been after, almost seen as an MBA, even though it wasn't literally an MBA program, but it was a master's in business and with an international approach that was seen as it. So that motivated me to go that route, as well as the bilingual aspect. I think it was going to allow me to be in the international business front as a bilingual person.
Mm-hmm. All right, who wants to add to that?
I can go next, maybe take it in a slightly different direction. I think because I started off working in the public sector and had and respected several, department directors and department leads who had the MPA, the Master in Public Administration. I debated getting an MPA while I was also considering an MBA. I eventually decided on the MBA because I thought it offered the most flexibility if I wanted to, continue working in the public sector or pivot in the, to the private sector. So fast forward some years, I won't say how many years, that assessment was largely accurate, because I now have experience in both areas. For me, deciding on a program, flexibility was very important, given the demands of the work environment I was in at that time. And I would say more specifically, the socially conscious orientation of the program that I eventually went with, the variety of, course information, course concentration that they had, the small class size, the location at the center of downtown Chicago, where I worked at the time. These were all factors that I considered when deciding on the program.
Mm-hmm. Stephanie,
Jump off of that. Oops, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we all kind of have very different stories, which I love. You know, as I had mentioned, I went to a program where my school offered a 4+1 program, and I had known I wanted to get my MBA, and I figured there was no better time to do that than when I was already in school mode. I ended up choosing Roger Williams because I have nothing but positive things to say about their undergrad program. And I was actually very close with the director of the MBA program at the time, and was chosen to be the graduate assistant for the program. And I really loved the program at Roger Williams University for my MBA because it's a very small group of students, and you know, they're all very driven, and we have close relationships with all of the professors. I felt like the closer relationships allowed me to really get to know my professors and the other students, and also myself. You know, I wasn't just a number there. And also, I know we had mentioned it earlier, flexibility is huge for me. So I was able to, you know, do my studies while also holding an internship on the side. I knew that I wanted to do an MBA because, you know, I do hopefully want to attain a leadership role in further along in my career. And I felt that an MBA would be the perfect degree for me to hopefully attain that and, you know, achieve my goals in the future.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And congratulations for that incredible position that you had in graduate school. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Tonya, how about you?
Yeah, again, I think I'm a little different, and I think this is really great because it provides great context for anyone who may be tuning in. But I went to Geisinger Commonwealth School of Medicine. So it was actually a master's graduate program at a medical school. And what helped me choose my program, I would say multiple things. So the school that I went to had 2 different campuses at the time that they were offering this program. And, what really drew me to the program that I did, which wasn't at the main campus, but at a satellite campus, was that the satellite campus was at a biotechnology center. And at that center, there were a number of pharmaceutical companies who were doing drug discovery and drug development. And so I really thought that was something that I had not had exposure to before. And I really wanted to broaden my knowledge and my understanding of different things and not just be so focused on one thing, right? I think when we have careers, we really know what we want and we go after it. But I think there's value in exploring different things and just being open. And so that's something that I really wanted to make sure that I did. And so I also looked at class size. When I look back on my graduate experience, we had a really tight cohort. All of us were able to support one another. We were able to kind of study together and really be there for each other in terms of having study groups and things of that sort. And I think that was really important to my success in my program. And so I think even thinking about business school, because I'll mention this a little later, but I do have plans to continue pursuing higher education. And something that I'm doing right now as I'm looking at schools is really, not just looking at what is available online, but if you have opportunities, speaking to students who have been in the program, or even if you have the opportunity or, the will to do so, visiting the campuses. I think that's really important because it's one thing to kind of read about the program, but really getting insight from students who have been through it is a really important piece of it. And so I think really just doing your research, doing your homework, that was a big part of what helped me to decide on my program, just understanding student experiences and how students who also didn't pursue medical school, how they were able to use the degree again, because, while I am in business now, originally my intent was to pursue medicine. And so I really wanted to understand, okay, well, for those who did not pursue medicine, were they able to use their degree? Were they able to get jobs? And so it's been great to just be able to, I've been able to talk to students at the school now who reach out to me and say, hey, you didn't go to medical school. How are you able to get these positions since graduating? And so I think talking to students, talking to alumni, even talking to faculty is another way to help decide. And those were all things that helped me.
I'm very glad that you raised the point of visiting campus and talking to the alumni, because that can make a huge difference. I see people, my friends, interviewing right now for master's degrees, and just going in person and talking to what it's going to be their peers or their colleagues, their professors changes. They think they're going to go one way, and then they meet them and they're like, actually, I think I get along more with this group. So yeah, I'm glad that you raised that point, because that's very important. But Now that you're talking right now, I'd really like to ask you, as a Master of Biomedical Science, how are you able to leverage the non-traditional education into the business world?
I think that's a really great question. I think it's something that was also difficult for me. When I was in my program and we were nearing the end, a number of students were applying to different health professional programs, and I knew that I wasn't going to go straight, that I still wanted to do some saving and get some more work experience. And so I think it's really about looking at your career experience and finding the connections to business, right? I mentioned that I worked in clinical research before, and when I look back at it and really reflected, a large part of that role was doing program and project management. There were a number of partners that we had on the research team. We had participants who were actually patients at a hospital. We had scientists who were in charge of managing our biological samples. I had to speak with clinical providers at the hospital that we saw our participants at. And on top of all of that, I had to manage participant activities, making sure that they were compliant. We would give out cash stipends. So there was a financial piece that I was managing. And then I was also, on top of all of that, doing writing to be published within journal articles. And so there was just so much going on, and just being able to manage all of that, I realized that I was doing program project management in my clinical research role. And so I think you really have to sit down and not limit yourself, right? First, you don't want to place limits on yourself. That's what I did. And then I also didn't allow others to place limits on me. There were times that I would go to interviews, and the interviews would ask me, maybe not so directly, but essentially, what do you have to offer us, right? Because I'm interviewing at consulting places, at consulting firms, at businesses, and they're wondering, well, how does this tie into what we're doing? And I think really being able to pull out your experience and connect it back to the work that they're doing is a huge part. And so, even looking at where I work now, we operate federally funded research and development centers for the government. And I look at career trajectories of my colleagues, and many of them have non-traditional backgrounds. You have people who came from journalism backgrounds and communication backgrounds, and now they're in business. And so I think for me, it was really about looking at what skills were transferable and making sure that I didn't place limits on myself, thinking that I only could get opportunities in the healthcare field or direct care patient fields.
Awesome. Yeah, that's very smart. It sounds like you really thought this out, and obviously you succeeded. So congratulations. And it's so eye-opening to hear from, each of you. But before we shift gears a little bit, I'd like to ask the viewers today, what motivates you to pursue higher education? And as you type your questions in the comment section or answers in the comment section, I want to remind you that we'll be having a Q&A session at the end of the session. So feel free to put whatever questions you have in the comments, and we'll be answering them shortly. That being said, I want to tell you guys a little bit about myself. I am 23. I'm a recent college graduate, and I have less than 1 year of experience in the professional field. And sometimes I think that I know where my career is heading, and other times I just don't know what's happening. And so I'd really like to know from each of you, if you were able to talk to your 23-year-old self, knowing everything that you know about your career and yourself now, what's the advice that you would give yourself?
Yeah, this one is big for me because I do work with a lot of people, whether in career transitions or when they're starting their careers, and this is a passion of mine. First of all, I do want to let you know, you're always trying to figure it out. There's not a straight map or somewhere, and I believe that as people of color as well as women, we started in this professional journey more recently than many of our counterparts. So that's important for you to keep in mind, that everyone in this call is being trailblazers and like leading the way and kind of laying the path for others to come along. So that's like something to know. What I will tell my 23-year-old self is, I was extremely driven. I still am. I'm working on it, but sometimes it's good to also stop and smell the roses along the way, especially when you're in this path of getting your master's degree. Then you're starting the corporate world, and I feel like I was going so fast that I didn't stop to be like, okay, maybe I can be a 20-something-year-old at the same time as I'm doing all these things, right? And I don't think that I necessarily did that. Also, because I was very driven and very competitive, there was this one advice that will always stay with me in my mind, which is, what's for you, it's for you. So you are not competing with other people or other women or your boss for his job or any, like there is a job for you in a higher level, in the next level. And it's not doesn't necessarily belong to anybody else. So there's a job that is created for you. And there's been plenty of times where I know that there's a job missing in a company, and I have presented a business case of, hey, you don't have this in this organization, you need it. And then suddenly you just created a job for yourself. So never be afraid of advocating for yourself, seeing where the need is and where the role opportunity is. And, you know, last thing I will tell myself is that we believe success is a straight row up on stairs. Like, you know, you just keep climbing and it just gets there. And it looks like this. It's the Scrabble. Sometimes you're going to make a lateral move. Sometimes you're going to make an upward move. Sometimes you're going to go to another company and take a different title, right? And I think that perception of I'm just going to go straight up is very, very different on how many of the leaders that I follow get there.
Mhm. No, I'm very glad that you mentioned the, you know, what's for you, it's out there. My mom has a saying, and we're Salvadoran, so it's in Spanish, but my mom has a saying, it's si no es tuyo, si es tuyo, nadie te lo quita, which translates to if it's yours, nobody can take it away from you.
Amen.
So
Yep.
you know, once you really internalize, it's a tough pill to swallow, of course, because sometimes we think, oh, this college is for me, this job is the one for me, and then we don't get it and we're distraught. But
yes,
you really
those are blessings, right?
Exactly.
So sometimes like the universe is telling you, no, you need to turn right, you know, and at the moment you're not ready to listen to it. But I think your mom is very wise.
I'll tell her that. Who wants to go next?
I can jump off of that because I totally agree. You know, you have this shiny new master's degree and then you want to hit the ground running, and you know, you kind of need to put your ego in check, or at least I did a little bit. So, you know, something I would tell to my 23-year-old self would be that you're always growing and you're not going to necessarily get your dream job or get it right off the bat. Good things take time, and you know, with hard work and patience, you will be able to get where you want to get. I think something that I'm still working on is, you know, building up that experience and those skills that I, you know, had gotten my master's degree to achieve. And I'm just noticing that, you know, you really are always learning and always growing. So, yeah.
Very wise.
It's getting very philosophical here, but I would say, to add to that, as much as possible, just make sure the path you choose is actually yours. And I say that with an appreciation that we're all humans, right? We're always sort of keeping social score from kindergarten to, you know, all the way through adulthood. I recommend really going within and making sure that your what and your why is clear, and it's not overly influenced by friends, colleagues, or whomever else might be doing, you know, what someone else might be doing or thinking about doing, etc. And obviously at 23, you have wonderful directions you can go in for various reasons. So that will take care of the what. For the why, I recommend just keep getting to the core until you reach a place, you know, that's beyond what peers are doing, beyond money, titles, even though those are important, don't get me wrong. But I think thinking through why the path you've decided on is good for you specifically, that's a place that sustains and brings contentment, because everything else, like Carol mentioned, will ebb and flow. So take the time to keep learning, to keep growing, ask lots of questions, because all of that will help to strengthen your decision-making regarding the direction or directions, as Tonya mentioned, you would like to ultimately explore.
Oh, I love that. Tony, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I love what everyone has shared. I think, wow, I'm taking it all in. And, you know, to piggyback off of what Ufoma shared, I think for me, the advice I would give myself is it's never too late to reinvent or to pivot. You know, going into college, I think a lot of us kind of have an idea of what we want to do, or sometimes you have no idea, right? And so you may choose a major and think you're going to come out doing one thing, and then maybe right before you graduate, you realize you want to do something completely different. And that can be daunting, right? Because you've invested so much time and money into your degree. But I think that just knowing that you can always pivot is important. And I think the second piece is you don't have to do it alone, right? It's like that saying, there's nothing new under the sun. So many people have been through these experiences. And so if you have a master's or if you're looking to get a master's and you don't know what the next step is, you can seek out help, right? There are people who have been through it. And I think just remembering that there are so many resources and programs available to help students. You know, for example, I am a leader for a nonprofit, and we help girls who are in high school to really think about their career trajectory, their career paths, their academic paths. There are so many programs out there. There are so many people out there who are willing to help. And sometimes it just takes you doing the digging to find those resources in those areas of or avenues of help. And so I think just knowing that you can always pivot. But I think a big piece of that goes back to what Ufoma shared, and knowing your why, right? Because your why should be driving the steps that you take. And so I just think really having that solid why and knowing that it's never too late to pivot are really things that I would have told myself back then, because I pivoted a little later than I would have if I had the opportunity to go back.
Yeah, I love that. Like not knowing where you're heading, but knowing why you're doing what you're doing can definitely keep you motivated in the days that it's like a little bit harder, of course. So that, yeah, I love that advice. But, you know, this question leads me to ask you guys, is there anything that you would have done differently in your career? I can see that this one like makes you all think.
I don't know. First of all, Foma, you have shared so much knowledge. I'm like taking notes here. It's really good. Each of you is so great. It's I don't know about the rest of the panelists, but this is a hard one because I am in a place of my life right now where I believe everything has happened for a reason. And even, you know, the leadership decisions that I have led to other opportunities, or have tell me, yo, go right or go left, and, you know, just making the best out of everything that happens. I have made moves that I'm like, oh, this was the wrong move. This is definitely not who I am. Or, you know, I'm in marketing. Marketing is so broad. So you could be a copywriter, you could be a content strategist, you can be, you know, digital. So there's so many aspects to marketing, and digital has its own realms. And that there were times that I took positions and I'm like, oh, this is a marketing manager job, right? And it was not the kind of marketing manager that the job description said, or that even the hiring manager had intended. So I think that do your research before you move to the next role. Sometimes the grass seems greener on the other side. And it's not necessarily, or sometimes you go after a title and you realize I completely hate my job. So go towards the things that give you energy. That will be, you know, one of the advices. I think early in my career I was chasing a title. I was trying to, you know, I was checking a box and be like, I'm gonna be this by this age, and this by this age, and this by the, and I, you know, I had it all figured out. And I just love how every time you do that, life makes sure that it, you know, it teaches you lessons. So you know, just go wherever it gives you energy. And you know, similar to what you said earlier, Valeria, you're not always gonna have it, you know, I don't know what to do next. Today I like this, I like that. You know, I can tell you I've been 20 years in my career, my professional career, and I still get energy from things that are not the things that bring me an income. So I make sure that I make space in my life to do those things, whether they bring me an income or not, and I separate those two. And I think that the junior generation of people are teaching us to do that versus the era that we come about, which is, no, you only do your job, you do it well, you work hard, and you retire. You know, like life has changed a little bit in that regard. So I'll say just go towards the things that give you energy.
That's a very good answer. Yeah.
Those are all very good, great tips. I think I would get rid of the pressure to meet some arbitrary must meet deadline, right? Kind of along the lines of what Carol was just saying. I mean, in as much as it is awesome, you know, to set your goals, strive to meet them, deciding on graduate school is an important commitment, right? So I would recommend, just mapping out all the factors that can help you decide whether it's location, whether it's rankings for your industry, program concentration options, you name it. After you decide, the rest will be a checklist. I mean, albeit it's a comprehensive to-do list, but at least it will be a more direct, defined list of, at that point, right? So in a nutshell, you figure it out, what your criteria is regarding the programs you're exploring, and you decide on which ones to apply to. And then once you do that, it's, you get into implementation mode. So the upfront work is just you prioritizing what's important to you and then executing.
Yeah. The pressure of setting deadlines for yourself is a big one. At least, for me, I think, and a lot of people have like an idea that by 25, I need to have 4 degrees, like, but it's a process. I agree with that. Stephanie, Tonia, is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, for me, I think a big piece of it would be just giving myself more freedom to explore. Again, as I alluded to earlier, I think I was very laser focused on one goal, which was medicine. And so I didn't give myself room to explore some of my latent talents or some of my other strengths. And I think that really just giving yourself the opportunity to explore exposes you to different things and different opportunities. And so I would just say really thinking about, not only your end goal, but also what other skills can you pick up along the way that are not maybe directly aligned with what you're going after, but other tools that will, support your ultimate goal. And I think also just the freedom to explore things outside of your professional journey, right? That's one part of us, but there's so much more to us. And so I think giving yourself the freedom to really tap into those things is a huge piece as well.
All right. Yeah. If that's all, we can move on to the next question. Have you guys had any mentors that have supported your journey? And if you have had that, what advice can you give people who are still seeking that on how or where to find it?
I can start with this. One of my mentors who I still consider a mentor today was the director of my MBA program. I think, when I'm personally looking for somebody to be a mentor, I look for certain qualities of that person, somebody who not necessarily has an exact position that I'd like, but has a lot of skills that I feel I can learn from, has respect for other professionals and themselves, and also great morals, because, you can have a relationship with somebody who has this great title, but if you don't really feel that connection with them, it's hard for them to mentor you and for you to build that connection further with them. So that's, my sort of checklist that I kind of go through when I am looking for a new mentor. And also I think there's a whole element to it of not necessarily, putting a checkbox on somebody like, oh, this is my mentor, like this person's not. I feel like we can learn a lot from everybody, from, people in leadership, people who are not far along in their careers. And I think just keeping that open mind has really helped me grow and really opened, up, where I'm willing to learn. So.
Yeah. Does anyone else have something you want to add?
Yeah. Ufum, I think you're muted.
Sorry. I was going to say, short answer to that is yes. In undergrad, I was fortunate to have, mentors from internships. Typically, there were department managers, leads, directors, you name it. That continued before and during graduate school, right? And I also highly recommend getting involved with professional organizations, because that was and has been a good avenue. I've also used the opportunity of, moving to a new city or even a new organization to connect with mutual contacts via LinkedIn from the previous organization, from the previous city where I lived. I found that to be very helpful. LinkedIn overall has proven, useful as far as having peer mentors who are, more versed in a particular area, for example, than I am. So it doesn't always have to be a top-down approach. I've, found peer mentors to be very valuable resources, and I encourage, people who are thinking about graduate degree programs to also make sure that they're identifying, older, more experienced, more seasoned professionals as mentors, but also people in their circle, in their circle of peers.
Yeah, I guess it goes to show that there are different kinds of mentors for different purposes,
Exactly.
Short answer, yes. Strongly recommended. And, make sure that you are, getting various mentors, not just one, and that can give you different experiences and different perspectives. Don't recommend it to be your direct manager, but can be a prior manager that you had, right? Because there will be compromising interest there. But absolutely, it is important to build a relationship, and then ask, for the mentorship. Sometimes there's some mentorships that happen without you even without you even asking, hey, can you be my mentor? So don't take those for granted, because those are the most important and special.
May I ask you, why do you not recommend for it to be your direct manager?
Sure, it could be your direct manager, but I do believe that sometimes it's important to separate the performance of a role and some of the questions that you're going to have. And you're never going to feel 100% that you can actually talk about the mistakes and the things that you've done wrong completely if it's your direct manager. Because if you have a great relationship with your manager and you can absolutely tell them that, absolutely. But even in the times that I feel the most comfortable with our direct manager, there's still things that I want to talk about. Let's say you want to talk about leaving the current role that you're in. Would you feel comfortable telling your manager that? Probably not. But if you're exploring, or, hey, I want to have a side hustle, and your current manager is like, well, this might interrupt her performance here, where she's barely, doing this and that. Like, there's just a conflict of interest there that could lead into probably not making you feel like you can share absolutely everything in your life. Now, if you feel that way, great, but that has been my experience in the past.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I just add to that real quick?
Yeah.
I totally agree with Carol. I think there's stated and informal mentorship, right? So what Carol is referring to is a sit down, formal agreement. You are my mentor and I am your mentee. However, I do think that you can learn tremendously from good leaders. So if you happen to be very fortunate and you're lucky to have a director that's wonderful, and you want to learn as much as you can from them, and they are in effect your mentor, even if you're not calling them that and they're not seeing you as a mentee. So I would sort of like move away from formally calling anyone, oh, you are my, or claiming anyone as my mentor, and just being open to learn from different individuals. But yes, Carol's absolutely right. If you're going to have a formal agreement, I think it's better to separate the two, but always keep your eyes and ears open for people who are doing great things and that you're learning from and would like to, replicate, whose style you would like to replicate in the future, because they are, in effect, your mentor too.
Yeah, no, that's very, very insightful. And in the topic of continuous growth, can you please share any personal or professional, like your bucket list for this year? Is there anything that you want to accomplish?
I can start with that one. I think I may have mentioned this a little earlier, but I'm actually planning on pursuing another degree. So I do want to go for my MBA. While I'm already in the business realm, I see so many advantages of the MBA. And so that's something that I want to pursue this year. And so one of my more short-term goals is to sit for the GRE. I know you can sit for the GMAT as well, but after some deliberation, I decided to go with the GRE. And so that's one area that I'm planning on pursuing. And I'm just really excited about the journey and excited to even learn from all of you who are here, as I know some of you have been in the business realm for a little longer. So that's one area that I really hope to go into and see where it takes me.
Awesome. Sounds like a very, very good goal to have. Good luck with the GRE.
Thank you.
I think for me, a lot of my bucket list goals for this year are more personal rather than, concrete. I want to do this, this, and that. Really trying to work on my own professionalism and trying to step out of my comfort zone and also not be so hard on myself. I think obviously that's pretty generic, but I think sometimes we can totally get caught up in it, especially as professionals. So yeah, I'm going to hold myself accountable to those.
Awesome. Yeah. Ufuma, Aaron, is there anything you?
Yeah, speaking of holding oneself accountable, I am working on expanding a couple of, project management niches. So we'll continue to do that. And now that the Kindle and paperback versions of the book is out, I am working on, or will be working on the audiobook version. So that's on my list.
Well, I'm excited to hear it in Audible.
That's awesome. So I, love that you're writing a book. I think that's like extremely cool. But I also like, I'll clap for Stephanie, because like prioritizing your personal life is very important, as well as, and I wish I would have done that earlier in my career as well. For me this year, I'm working on taking my business, coaching business to the next level, and expanding on more digital solutions. So I'm excited about that. But also I'm being more purposeful in my time at home, and making sure that I'm balancing home and work as much as possible. I'm a mom of two. I have a 10-month-old baby, and I feel like all life changes happened at the same time last year, and I want to make sure that I'm having some time to enjoy and sitting still. And then professionally, of course, I'm doing some amazing things in my current role that will require my attention and my devotion, and I'm very excited to do so.
Oh, that's amazing. Congrats on the new baby.
Thank you.
And well, the last question that we have today is, given that this event was organized in honor of International Women's Day, can you please share what the observance means to you?
I
That's a
can
good-
start.
Okay.
You
Go
can
ahead.
go. Yeah, I feel like we've come so far just, as women throughout history, and it just makes me really proud to sit alongside so many successful professional women. And I'm just really grateful that, we can really become powerful and stand up for ourselves and our own skills.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a welcome opportunity to recognize like the personal and professional, challenges, contributions, triumphs of half, well, give or take, depending on what part of the world you're in, I guess, of the population since the 20th century. So it's definitely a worthy observance too.
Mhm.
Yeah, just to piggyback, I mean, I agree. I think when I think about International Women's Day, I just think about women and balancing. Women balance so much, whether you're a mother, you're a sister, a daughter, we balance so much. Many of us, we go to our first shift at work, and then we come home and we do our second shift. And I really just honor women for how far we've come and for the opportunities that we've created for ourselves. When I look back at my own journey, every opportunity that I've been given has been through a woman. Even when I look at my supervisors and my management, I've been fortunate that I've had all women managers. And so, just being led by women has been amazing. And I think it just really shows what's possible. And so I really just always take this month and this day to really appreciate what's been done before and where we're even taking the ceiling, because we're taking it even higher.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. At this time, we'll transition to the Q&A portion of the session. So we'll try to get through as many questions as possible. And once again, I'd like to thank Caro, Rufuma, Tonia, and Stephanie for joining us today. And a special thank you for QS for making this session possible. The first question that we have today is, I feel like I'm self-sabotaging myself. I lack the motivation to take the first step. What would you recommend? What should be my first step?
self-sabotaging to pursue a degree, or should we assume that's
Yes.
okay? First of all, you need to figure out what's holding you back. What is your fear? And I will say one of the number one things that we deal with most as women is imposter syndrome, and constantly having to validate why we belong in the room. And, you know, something that motivated me to pursue my degree was to be able to see, I question a lot of questions around me, and like, you know, that doesn't sound right, or this doesn't sound right. And I'm like, then quickly I realized, like, I don't think anybody in this room knows what they're talking about. And you're going to have that feeling a lot in your entire career in life. And that's the more and more I realize, okay, you know, I think differently, but more importantly, they also think differently. And your thinking is needed in every single place that you go, because the diversity of thinking is what gets us to amazing outcomes and innovation. So find out what is it that is driving that fear. What is that doing that self-sabotaging? Another piece that I wanted to give as advice that I haven't been able to answer on is there's many, you know, think about what is the reasons you want to pursue it and get there. For me, another reason that drive me to select Pearl International University was their career advice office, which I utilize and train and practice interviewing processes that allow me and got me to get the jobs that I have. So a lot of people, when I was pursuing the master's degree, they didn't take advantage of the career advice offices and they teach you how to interview, how to do all of that. So you're going to get all the resources that you need, but first you need to identify what is driving that fear.
If I could add something to that really quick, I think a big part, a big piece that played a role in my journey was that wanting to wait until I was ready, right? And while there are many things that do require adequate planning, sometimes we just have to take that step. And so if you've done your homework, if you've done the planning, you've done your research, just take the step, because if not, it may just never happen, or it may never come. And so I think that's been a struggle for me, a challenge for me, and it still continues to be. And so sometimes I have to remind myself, there's never going to be that perfect time. And so if you've done your homework, I think just taking the step is another important factor to consider.
Yeah, it's a very good one. I struggle
Yeah.
with that.
And the question takes me back to grade school, right? In grade school math teacher, when we would procrastinate or complain about too much homework, she would say, plan your work and work your plan. So that has always, you know, stuck with me. Anytime I'm challenged with delaying or not wanting to do something, make a list just to start with, okay, I'm going to research XYZ on so-and-so date. And just keep making lists that are tied to your goal. I think when you look at your goal as one big lump of something in your task to do, it can feel overwhelming. But if you break it down into smaller to-do list items and give yourself enough time, again, back to not wanting to rush, not paying attention to what someone is doing, how many schools they've applied to or got into, that's none of your business. Focus on your own path and keep checking off the list as you go, and acknowledge the progress you're actually making. So don't delay giving yourself a pat on the back until, oh, I'm gonna be happy or happier when I've applied to XY school and I've gotten acceptance letters from XYZ. No, enjoy the process. So back to my comment about why. So get clear on why you're actually getting the degree. And I think that would help in terms of motivating you to daily, take small actions towards accomplishing the end goal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add that.
No, just sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, think about your reasons why, and are they stronger than your fears? And I have not met someone that has regret actually getting the degree, right? Like I have met very few people that is like, oh, I regret taking that. No, like it's something that, like my mom always says, like it's something that stays with you, right? And if you want to experience or explore further, you can do that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. since we only have 5 minutes left, let's move on to the next question. How important was your network to your how important was your network in your educational and career journey? I'm unsure whether I am surrounded by people who are holding me back or are really looking after me. That's a really good one.
I can start with this. I think your network is 100% important, but it's not everything. You know, you kind of dictate where you're going to go in your career. And yes, connections always 100% help. But, you know, if you have connections that aren't necessarily in a line of work you hope to pursue, obviously that can become a little bit more difficult. So, you know, I would recommend, you know, building that network a little bit, surrounding yourself with some people who have positions in a line of work that you are interested in. So then you can, you know, bounce some ideas off of them and kind of have a better line as to like where your path will take you.
Yeah. So I'm an introvert, very heavily introverted. I love the company of a book and a couch and a blanket. So like I need to still do a better job at networking. I'm very much like, if I just stick my head down and do my job, I'll get, you know, where I need to get. But network's important. It's important for you to talk to people and connect with people. However, if you have to ask the question that if people are holding you back, is because you know that the answer is yes. And then you need to make sure that you keep your personal relationships personal and your professional relationships professional. They don't have to blend over, and you can just, you know, make sure that you are connecting outside of the current group that you're in if you have personal connections with those quote unquote people that are holding you back. But if you're asking the question, then you probably know the answer.
Yeah, that's a very good point. But since we only have, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add to what Carol mentioned. I think energy is very important, and we have a limited amount of it to waste, so to speak. And to Carol's point, if you have to ask the question, you know the answer. And since you now have the answer, I encourage you to focus almost exclusively on things that will further your path. So be positive, be optimistic, and keep trudging forward, regardless of what anyone does or says. So never let their energy, or what you're feeling of them holding you back, deter you. Keep trudging forward.
Well, that being said, thank you so much for your thoughtful answers. And thank you everybody who, you know, asked their questions and for tuning in today's session. Once again, I'd like to give a big shout out for all the panelists that joined us today, and of course our partners at QS for making this session possible. Stay tuned for future sessions and be sure to follow QS and Study in the USA on social for more resources to help you on your journey. Thank you all for
having us.
Thank you.
Thank you all. This was wonderful. Valeria, thank you for having us.
Well, thank you.
All right. Have a great one, everyone. Bye.
Okay.